Today is January 23rd. Welcome to Big Book Daily. My name is Rob. I am an alcoholic, and it is a thrill and a joy to be here with you today as we journey through the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous and the 12 Steps and 12 Traditions. Today we will be reading Into Action, Chapter 6, pages 80 through 84 in the Big Book, and we're going to be reading Chapter 4, Step 4, pages 47 and 48. So with all that, let's get right into the book. The Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, page 80. Before taking drastic action which might implicate other people, we secure their consent. If we've obtained permission, have consulted with others, asked God to help, and the drastic step is indicated, we must not shrink. This brings to mind a story about one of our friends. While drinking, he accepted a sum of money from a bitterly hated business rival, giving him no receipt for it. He subsequently denied having received the money and used the incident as a basis for discrediting the man. He thus used his own wrongdoing as a means of destroying the reputation of another. In fact, his rival was ruined. He felt that he had done a wrong that he could not possibly make right. If he opened that old affair, he was afraid that it would destroy the reputation of his partner, disgrace his family, and take away his means of livelihood. What right had he to involve those dependent upon him? How could he possibly make a public statement exonerating his rival? After consulting with his wife and partner, he came to the conclusion that it was better to take those risks than to stand before his Creator guilty of such a ruinous slander. He saw that he had to place the outcome in God's hands, or he would start drinking again. And all would be lost anyhow. He attended church for the first time in many years. After the sermon, he quietly got up and made an explanation. His action met widespread approval, and today he's one of the most trusted citizens of his town. This all happened years ago. The chances are that we have domestic troubles. Perhaps we're mixed up with women in a fashion that we wouldn't care to have advertised. We doubt if, in this respect, alcoholics are fundamentally much worse than other people. But drinking does complicate sex relations in the home. After a few years with an alcoholic, a wife gets worn out, resentful, and uncommunicative. How could she be anything else? The husband begins to feel lonely, sorry for himself. He commences to look around in the nightclubs or their equivalent for something besides liquor. Perhaps he's having a secret and an exciting affair with the girl who understands. In fairness, we must say that she may understand, but what are we going to do about a thing like that? A man so involved often feels very remorseful at times, especially if he is married to a loyal and courageous girl who has literally gone through hell for him. Whatever the situation, we usually have something to do about it. If we are sure our wife does not know, should we tell her? Not always, we think. If she knows in a general way that we have been wild, should we tell her in detail? Undoubtedly, we should admit our fault. She may insist on knowing all the particulars. She will want to know who the woman is and where she is. We feel that we ought to say to her that we have no right to involve another person. We are sorry for what we have done and, God willing, it shall not be repeated. More than that we cannot do. We have no right to go further. Though there may be justifiable exceptions, and though we wish to lay down no rule of any sort, we have often found this is the best course to take. Our design for living is not a one-way street. It is as good for the wife as it is for the husband. If we can forget, so can she. It is better, however, that one does not needlessly name a person upon whom she can vent jealously. Perhaps there are some cases where the utmost frankness is demanded. No outsider can appraise such an intimate situation. It may be that both will decide that the way of good sense and loving kindness is to let bygones be bygones. Each might pray about it, having the other one's happiness uppermost in mind. Keep it always in sight that we are dealing with the most terrible human emotion, jealousy. Good generalship may decide that the problem be attacked on the flank rather than risk a face-to-face combat. If we have no such complication, there is plenty we should do at home. Sometimes we hear an alcoholic say that the only thing he needs to do is keep sober. Certainly he must keep sober, for there will be no home if he doesn't. But he is yet a long way from making good to the wife or parents whom for years he has so shockingly treated. Passing all understanding is the patience mothers and wives have had with alcoholics. Had this not been so, many of us would have no homes today, would perhaps be dead. The alcoholic is like a tornado, roaring his way through the lives of others. Hearts are broken, sweet relationships are dead. Affections have been uprooted. Selfish and inconsiderate habits have kept home in turmoil. We feel a man is underthinking when he says that sobriety is enough. He is like the farmer who came up to the cyclone cellar to find that his home was ruined. To his wife he remarked, "Don't see anything the matter here, Ma. Ain't it grand that the wind stopped blowing?" Yes, there's a long period of reconstruction ahead, and we must take the lead. A remorseful rumbling that we are sorry won't fit the bill at all. We ought to sit down with the family and frankly analyze the past as we now see it, being very careful not to criticize them. Their defects may be glaring, but the chances are that our own actions are partly responsible. So we clean house with the family, asking each morning in meditation that our Creator show us the way of patience, tolerance, kindness, and love. The spiritual life is not a theory. We have to live it. Unless one's family expresses a desire to live upon the spiritual principles, we think we ought not to urge them. We should not talk incessantly to them about spiritual matters. They will change in time. Our behavior will convince them more than our words. We must remember that 10 or 20 years of drunkenness would make a skeptic out of anyone. There may be some wrongs we can never fully right. We don't worry about them if we can honestly say to ourselves that we would right them if we could. Some people cannot be seen. We send them an honest letter. There may be a valid reason for postponement in some cases, but we don't delay if it can be avoided. We should be sensible, tactful, considerate, and humble without being servile or scraping. As God's people, we stand on our feet. We don't crawl before anyone. If we are painstaking about this phase of our development, we will be amazed before we're halfway through. We're going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. We will not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. We will comprehend the word serenity, and we will know peace. No matter how far down the scale we have gone, we will see how our experience can benefit others. That feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. We will lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows. Self-seeking will slip away. Our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. Fear of people and of economic insecurity will leave us. We will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us. We will suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. Are these extravagant promises? We think not. They are being fulfilled among us, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. They will always materialize if we work for them. All right, that is a beautiful way to end today's reading in the Big Book. We'll come back to that in just a second. Let's jump right into Chapter 4, Step 4 of the 12 and 12. We are on page 47. We'll be reading 47 and 48 today. We thought conditions drove us to drink, and when we tried to correct these conditions and found that we couldn't to our entire satisfaction, our drinking went out of hand and we became alcoholics. It never occurred to us that we needed to change ourselves to meet these conditions, whatever they were. But in AA, we slowly learned that something had to be done about our vengeful resentments, self-pity, and unwarranted pride. We had to see that every time we played the big shot, we turned people against us. We had to see that when we harbored grudges and planned revenge for such defeats, we were really beating ourselves with the club of anger that we intended to use on others. We learned that if we were seriously disturbed, our first need was to quiet that disturbance, regardless of who or what we thought caused it. To see how erratic emotions victimized us often took a long time. We could perceive them quickly in others, but only slowly in ourselves. First of all, We had to admit that we had many of these defects, even though such disclosures were painful and humiliating. Where other people were concerned, we had to drop the word blame from our speech and our thought. This required great willingness even to begin, but once over the first 2 or 3 high hurdles, the course ahead began to look easier. We had started to get perspective on ourselves, which is another way of saying that we were gaining in humility. All right. First of all, those promises, oh my goodness, they are absolutely beautiful, I think. The very, very first part of the promises, if we are painstaking about this phase of our development, for me, I had to be painstaking. I had to keep trying at it, being as thorough as possible. As I've said a few times, I couldn't do any half measures here. I had to go all in and really, honesty was the foundation for me since day one. Am I really an alcoholic? Am I really powerless? Do I really believe in the higher power? Do I really want to make this decision to turn my will and my life over to God? Do I really want to go through this moral inventory and tell people everything? Do I really want all these defects of character removed from me? Am I really willing to make these amends to people? And I like that a little earlier in the reading, it talks about how it says, yes, there is a long period of reconstruction ahead, and we must take the lead. A remorseful mumbling that we're sorry won't fit the bill. I've heard of a living amends. We're going to have to live it every single day. We might have had years of destructive behavior. As the big book says, we were like that tornado roaring his way through the lives of others. It takes years to build, to rebuild. And sometimes if we make our amends a little too quickly, it might ring hollow. But if we show our families and the ones we love that we really want to change, I think actions certainly speak a lot louder than words. It just takes time. And like the big book says right here, the spiritual life's not a theory. We have to live it. And sure enough, it's in italics. Hopefully, our behavior will convince them more than our words will. Yeah, I just think there's so much practicality in today's steps, but I love those promises. If we are painstaking about this phase of our development, we'll be amazed before we're halfway through. We are going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. This freedom and happiness that I feel now, there's nothing like it. It's just like the big book says, I can look the world in the eye now, and try to live this daily. I'm going to mess up. I'm going to screw up, but I can make those amends daily and get right back on it. I know serenity and I know peace. I don't feel useless anymore. I don't really pity myself anymore. And I give all that glory to the God of my understanding. And working through these steps, I've gotten to know him a whole lot better. Anyways, my friends, that's all we have today. It is a thrill and an honor to be here with you in this lifeboat of recovery. And we will see you back here tomorrow.